Hello all, Darkside user here. I wanted to give you all a quick update for some modifications that I have made to the more realistic elevator that Mumbo Jumbo designed. All props and credit go to Mumbo for designing such an incredible functioning piston flying machine elevator. The thing really is amazing. But I need to make some modifications in order to use it in my own online server. I have an online server that I pay for through Bisect for me and several friends. So I needed a much larger elevator. It has to go down about 100 blocks. So our elevator shaft to our mine is actually much deeper because our castle is built on a hill. And then I wanted to make some other modifications to it as well. A few visual changes, and then someone had made some comments about wanting to have some actual noises in the elevator, like some dings as it moves up and down the floors and the doors open. So I went ahead and figured out a way to make those modifications as well, and I thought I would just go through and show you all. So I'll apologize at the beginning. My computer is about 4 or 5 years old, so it is not the most updated as far as system or anything goes. So this is probably not the highest end recording or anything, and we are on an online server, so there could be a little bit of lag, but I think it'll work just fine. To start off with, we're actually down inside of our mine right now for my server, and kind of made the outside look a little bit like Green Gots. Everything's quartz and so forth. We're running kind of a vanilla spigot model until everyone gets used to it. A lot of my friends haven't played Minecraft either before or not in a very long time, so I didn't want to get into mods with them just yet. But it's 1.14.2, works just fine here. Had to recreate it from watching through Mumbo's videos and kind of monitoring on a second computer. I have a few signs up to explain to them how to actually use the elevator. When you're actually inside the elevator itself, because it is a small size carriage, just one person at a time. In case you all recreate this, the design it is just one person at a time. There is a bit of a block lift limit, I believe, with sticky pistons, unless I'm wrong about that, but it's also just too cramped for too many people, and you could actually damage the system. In addition, especially if you're in survival mode, once you are inside the elevator, so once you cross these paths here and you actually get inside the cart, don't move. Just like a plane or a boat or anything else that's moving at high rates of speed, keep your arms and legs inside and don't move until the elevator comes to a complete stop. I have noticed at some point some fall damage potential that would tick up a little bit. Nothing massive, but a few ticks of health would pop on and off when I was in survival mode and actually riding the elevator if I moved around too much. So you don't want to do any damage to yourself or take a chance of actually, the elevator coming apart and because it is 3 piston machines, one of it going up and the other part getting stuck on you. So just when you enter the elevator, don't move. You can pan the camera around if you want to and look behind you so you can watch the elevator go up and down, but don't actually move your character around a lot. For how tall the elevator shaft is here, which we're going to see the elevator work and go up and down, then I'm going to take you inside the elevator shaft and explain the circuitry and explain the changes that I made to it as well. For here, if the elevator's here, I'll just explain to my people, once you step over the plates, step immediately into the elevator and off it goes. And like we said, don't move until it gets done moving and deposits you. If the elevator is not here, the send and return signals that Mumbo designed, which I've modified just a little bit, they will work, but it takes about 48 seconds for the elevator to actually get from the top all the way to the bottom. Now the way these send and return signals work, and you'll see it more in a little bit when I take you inside, when someone you get in the elevator, you go up, the elevator goes all the way to the top, and then you actually leave and go out the elevator again, go out the other doors up there or down here, you'll step over the plates a second time. And when you do, that will send the elevator back to wherever you sent it, to wherever you originally called it from. So if I call the elevator from here down inside the mine, I'll ride the elevator all the way back up and I get out up top inside of my castle, I'll step over these plates to come out. That will send the elevator back down to the mine. But if I go out and wander around outside and I want to come back inside my castle and go back down, I can. I just step over the plates, the glass will be closed, and it takes about 48 seconds because of how tall this elevator is for it to get up there to me, and then I can walk inside of it and go down. So let's see the elevator work, and I want you to listen for some of the the notes and dings and so that I put into it, and some of the visual cues that I put into it to make it just a little bit different, a little bit fancier. And then I'll take you inside and show you what additions I made. So let's listen to it first. You come around, here we are. And if you listen, you can hear the dings. So every time it goes up a level, you hear a little beep. And of course I put these little glass blocks right in here so that you could, it kind of gives the visual illusion that we're moving up and down, and they're actually timed so that you see them right as the ding actually happens. So I'll go up top here. Almost there. Like I said, it is a very tall elevator shaft. And here we are. Now, you noticed, so you have kind of that lower pitch ding every time you hit a metaphysical level, so to speak, and that just gives you the illusion of actually moving up and down very large amounts of floor. It gives you, the player, gives them a little bit of sense of time passage rather than just sitting in the elevator shaft and staring at the wall. That's why I also thought the visual cues of the glass pieces down here with the signs on them was a little bit of a nice addition too. I was kind of proud of myself for that. And when you get up to the top and down to the bottom, in addition to those low end note cues, which tell you as you're moving up and down the floor, you also hear a higher pitch tone, which is you actually arriving at the top floor or the bottom floor. So those high pitched tones only hit on the top and bottom floor. Let's go out and take a peek at the elevator circuitry itself. Okay. So let's all turn around. Okay, so this elevator is actually contained, I have kind of a starter castle that I did for everyone here. It's contained within inside these big white quartz blocks. Everything's quartz and kind of fancy. I took it from kind of the design of Gringotts in Harry Potter because I'm a nerd and I love Harry Potter. So for my players and all, when they spawn into the world for the first time, their spawn point is right here. And this castle is, of course, a safe zone for them. So they can't modify anything, you know, standard rules of Minecraft within this zone that's kind of roped off here. They can get into the chests and so forth. And I created that community mine for them down there so they can actually go exploring and mine some valuable materials. But let me show you what the circuitry actually looks like and give you an idea for the scale of how I scaled up this elevator to work a little bit. So, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So here's actually the starting castle for my area, for my server here. It is June, so happy Pride Month. Little village, and some of us will have little houses down there. But here is actually the top part. You can see the mine shaft is in the corner here. It's buried down inside of this corner of the castle, and actually dives about 100 blocks down, straight down into where I discovered a mine. So I have some little maintenance, elevator maintenance doors. Let me take you inside. So here's the inside of the circuitry. If you've seen Mumbo's design, you'll see that all of this looks very familiar. It's just built and contained within this piece on top here. So the little white pyramidal structure on top kind of contains the top portion. I'll explain the note block section here in a bit. So all of this section on top is identical to Mumbo's design. I'll let you see his video for explanations about how all of that works. He's obviously much better than I am. But I did make some slight modifications to the send and receive signal, so we'll start there first. So whenever the elevator is down at the very bottom, which it is right now, when I left it went down to the very bottom, if someone were up top and wanted to use it, they would walk across those plates right there, and that would actually call the elevator back up to the top. Now, when you send a redstone signal down, it is a little bit more difficult than sending a redstone signal up. So for the when you send a signal up from the bottom, he has a series of these red torches that alternate up and down, which is very ingenious. For sending the signal down, what he had was this series of, you had a piston here, sticky piston, with about 9 or 10 slime blocks on it, and at the bottom was a redstone block, and of course the mineshaft here is much deeper. And then what would happen is, you would push that button up top, and it would activate that redstone circuit, which would activate that piston, and it would shove that series of 9 or 10 slime blocks, or however many there were, there might have been 15 or so, down, and that red block would move one block down, so about that level there, and it would actually activate this redstone. And that redstone signal fed into the back of the entire assembly of the elevator, activated it back here, and sent the flying machine back up. So the signal started up top, sent it down, the flying machine would come all the way up the elevator track, and would actually land up top, and then the person could get inside and ride it back down again, thanks to that send and receive signal. I had to make modifications because the mine shaft that I installed it in was much larger. Sticky pistons can only press 12 blocks at a time, so what I had to do was make some modifications here. So you'll see there's actually a series of pistons that activate one after the other. So when this pressure plate is activated here, this sticky piston presses, there are 9 slime blocks attached to a single redstone block here. It presses down 1 block down, which activates this piece of redstone, which is suspended from obsidian. These are, of course, obsidian doesn't move with slime, so these 2 obsidians here are just markers, space markers for me. And attached to the bottom of that piece of obsidian is a sticky piston, and we rinse and repeat that same process till we get to the bottom. So what you want to do, depending upon how deep you dig your mine shaft, and theoretically you could make this thing hundreds and hundreds of blocks long, you just repeat this process to send the signal down. You would start, I did it in series of 10 because it's easier to keep track of. You start with 9 slime blocks attached to the sticky piston up here. That's Mumbo's original design. And then you ended that with the block number 10 is the redstone. Come 2 spaces down of empty space and create an obsidian block that sticks out. Piece of redstone on top, which is actually what gets activated when that block hits down. It moves 1 down, activates that redstone, which passes the signal to this sticky piston. Another series of 9, and then another block activates that sticky piston. We rinse and repeat until we get to the very bottom, and you just have to, when you get to the very last one, you just have to count your slime blocks so that with his original design of the red rule here that carries the signal down, there is a simple redstone block here that moves 1 down and activates that redstone circuitry, which is his original design, all the way down here to reactivate, which would send it back up. Okay, so the only thing you have to do is if you extend this thing and make it longer and deeper, you simply have to extend a series of call repeats. You can't attack 50 or 60 slime blocks on at the same time, so I had to break it up into a series of 10. Had to do a very similar thing for the send and receive signal for the bottom. So if this elevator were at the top already and I were down here in the bottom and wanted to call it up, it's very similar. I would press the plates down inside there. That signal would get fed up these pink series here of pink wool, magenta wool, and we go all the way up. Now there are alternating patterns of on, off, all the way till we get to the very top. And of course, all I had to do was extend this to based on how deep my elevator shaft was. Now the thing that I found out is the most important part, according to his original design, your top piece must be in the off position torch. If not, what happens is this entire series of back activation redstone is always active. If that torch there, right there, is in the on position, then all of this redstone is constantly on, which means the send and receive signal will not work because it will be double powered. So what you have to do is ensure that that one starts in the off position. And what I did was I built all of my top apparatus first, just like his design, stuck the top torch down, came all the way down, and when I got to the bottom and determined how deep I wanted it, I actually had to extend my original design by 1 extra level, because while the top one has to be in the off position, the bottom torch must be in the on position. Originally my design stopped up here, and I noticed the send and receive signal would not work because this torch was off. And that caused this series up top to be incorrectly wired. So you simply have to count and keep track of how many you have and in what sequence they need to turn on and off. When you have this high of a structure, it can get a little bit more confusing. But beyond that, it's set up exactly the same. But those 2 modifications, because of the height of this elevator system, were necessary for the send and receive signals from the top and the bottom. The sticky pistons over here, a series of them, and then just counting and being aware on the pink ones of keeping your torches in the correct sequence. Now, let me go through and explain to you how the bell system works in here. And I was a little bit proud of this, actually. You get into first person mode. So here's how it works. On the very back of the third flying machine, what I think of as flying machine number 3. So you have flying machine number 1 there for the left side, flying machine number 2 there for the right side, flying machine number 3 for the back of the elevator. The very back of it, you have this sticky block, which is directly above an observer, okay, attached to that piston. The only thing I did was I attached an observer on the right-hand side of that sticky block, and it points that way, okay? By the way, this texture pack is called LB Photorealism. It's the remix one, or relisted one, I forget what she called it. The original LB hasn't been done in a few years, but this is a very nice updated model. I really suggest it. So that observer actually, in its lowest position, that observer sets on this gold block. I guess it wouldn't actually be necessary, but I left it there for a spacer. It is very, very vital that you get the spacings of these gold blocks correctly. They have to be lined up correctly as you go up, so that the flying machine can pass between them and not cause any damage or break any redstone, but also the observer passes them. So what happens is the observer, in its bottom position, when it leaves, when it starts from the bottom and goes up, it does not activate this series of nodes, okay? When it goes up, its first node activation is here, okay? And the same sequence is true for when it starts at the very top. When it's at the top and comes down, it does not activate the topmost node sequence. It activates this series and goes down. Okay? So what happens is, if we turned it on right now, on the bottom, it would start with all of these nodes. And every time it goes up one level, this observer passes by this repeater, which is set to its lowest tick point, 0.1 here. That repeater feeds one block over, then 2 blocks back with a note block on top. I use gold. You could use whatever you wanted to, but gold underneath of this note block produces the bell sound. I like the bell sound because it's the most accurate for a elevator, but if you wanted it to sound like banjos or trumpets or whatever you want, have fun. That's part of Minecraft. But I put it on gold just because I like it. So what I did to get all of your lineup sequencing correct, start your gold block directly in front of this observer, which once again you put on the side of that sticky piston facing that way. And you come up however many levels you want, however much space you want to be between your levels. I found that for how fast this flying machine moves, I put one of these with 3 block spaces between them. So the elevator shaft is kind of fancy, kind of white looking and lit up from the observer. All they see is inside the car, so they see this and nothing else. But I put these little signs here, and I found that a good distance with a comfortable number of dings was about 3 spaces in between them. But you can do it however much you want. The greater amount of space you put between them, the less dings you will have. I wouldn't go much more than 3 block distance between them, or it gets really repetitive and kind of annoying. So you simply have a repeater that points this way. 1 dust, 2 dust, right into your note block. The note block is set on these notes that indicate every level. They're all identical. Each notes here that indicate the level risers are set on an F# 3. That is the low tone note. It's the note that you first get when you place a note block. So when you place a note block, it's the very first note. You don't have to change it. It's an F# 3. I'm not a music major, so I'm not really sure what that means, but there we are. I like the sound. Now, the only thing that changes is, as you go up, they're all identical. Every one of them is identical. When you get to the very top and bottom, the top and bottom are a little bit different, and they're a little expanded. So they start with one of these, okay? So they have the same setup here. So there's the repeater, one here. Now, but we've changed a little bit about what type of notes we're activating. So first of all, and this is due just because of how my system in here is built, but you could design this however you wanted to. I just had to do it to squeeze it in. So first of all, when it gets to the very top and it activates its last note, the signal passes through the observer here, hits that note block, which is an F# 3, the same as the lower notes first, and then it hits these repeaters, which purposely delay the signal. I wanted it to be delayed by about 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds. So they're set to their fullest setting, which is 0.4, 2 of them in a row, and then they come out here to hit 3 other note blocks. So it lands, it hits that note first, kind of a low ding. The signal continues to pass through here, goes up and hits that block, and hits that block at the same time. Those blocks are a very high tone pitch of a C5. So these are very much high-pitched, and there are 3 of them, so they're louder. And this here is still your standard regular low tone. So what happens is it races up, ding, 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 every level. Then it hits here, ding. As the doors open, I worked out the timing, as the doors open, you hear a high-pitched ding, which actually tells you, oh, you have arrived at the floor that you can exit from. And the same exact design is mirrored down below here as well. So down below, when the elevator lands, after going through its series, ding, 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 etc., it would hit this low tone block. The delay would allow it to open the doors, and then the high tone blocks go ding, much higher press. So I'm going to activate it here for you, let you hear it from inside, and then that's pretty much it. Oh, the one thing I should say, people have asked me, some of my friends asked me, why did I use repeaters here instead of just laying a piece of redstone, because an observer could activate it then as well. You're correct, it can. If you lay a piece of redstone here instead, what happens is the observer passes it, it hits the block, and it makes one single ding, and then as the observer leaves the block, it makes another ding. So what you actually get is every 2 levels you get a double series of bell tones. You get ding ding, which is not really what an elevator sounds like, instead of a single one. But by allowing the observer to see the repeater, it allows it to only activate one time, and you get a single tone. So I just thought that that was more accurate. So just to save you some time. So let's see now what it sounds like. So from the bottom going up, here's what you hear. And you hear, you know, it hits every single one, that low tone. It's also nice, not only is it a little bit more immersive in the world and a little bit more believable than just having a flat sound, it helps to distract from the kind of noisy elevator, because flying machines are loud. That's just part of Minecraft. And it also gives you a sense of movement and a sense of time passage. Because this elevator shaft is so large, it helps the player be a little bit more immersed in the world. So let's listen to that final tone. See, there's that high tone. And of course, if you did it from here, you would have the same thing. All the way down. It also gives your player a visible cue. So if I had pressed the plates down here and the elevator were being called down and waiting for me, it would be a little while, and I would be wondering, is the elevator working? Like, is it actually coming or not? You know, what's happening with it? I can hear it approach. Oh, I hear the bells going. It is here. It is coming. So it just gives your player a bit of a visual and auditorial cue from both locations. And it's just more realistic and fun. Oh, there's that high-pitched tone. So, there we are. I'm going to step outside now of here. I hope you've enjoyed seeing how Mumbo Jumbo's elevator can be put into an actual working world, and some of the modifications that you can make to it to make it even a little bit more immersive. Once again, my sincere appreciation and thanks to Mumbo for creating such an awesome redstone contraption, and for sharing that with us. And I look forward to exploring more builds and going from there. Hope y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.